Is a midweek message from Jim Hopwood, pastor of Edgerton United Methodist Church in Edgerton, Kansas. The usual bunch of clowns are saying that the coronavirus is God's will. Now, they say this kind of thing anytime something bad happens. It's always God punishing somebody for something, and it's always something they're against. Homosexuality, abortion, vaccinations, you name it. It is truly amazing how God shares the same prejudices that they do. What, me bigoted? Oh no, I just hate the things that God hates, right? Now, you might think that this kind of theological malpractice was passe, but a lot of people lap it up because sadly it confirms their prejudices too. When I encounter these folks, I often say, I don't think God is half the jerk you think he is. Now, normally I use inclusive language for God, but the sort of deity we're dealing with here is almost always male. And for shock value, I use a more colorful word than jerk. In reality, of course, God is not a jerk at all. God is not the cause of this pandemic. It is not God's will. And those who say it is God's will are liars. And I am tired of them giving God a bad name by blaming God for all the bad stuff that happens in our world. Inevitably, they will defend themselves by pointing to some verse in the Old Testament, especially when it's quoted out of context. The Old Testament is a gold mine for violent and hateful ideas about God. But Jesus is the full and complete revelation of God, and the testimony of Jesus is that God does not hurt people because they've broken some rule or another. God does not toss thunderbolts at miscreants. That's Zeus, don't you know? If God did try to fry people with thunderbolts, or tornadoes, or hurricanes, or whatever, you'd think God would have a whole lot better aim, and there'd be a whole lot less collateral damage. Want to know more about this? Read chapter 9 of the Gospel of John. In Jesus' day, as in ours, it was commonly believed that if something bad happened to you, God must be punishing you for some sin. Not so, Jesus says clearly. Here's another example. How about all those people who died in tornadoes on Easter Sunday just a few days ago? Were they, those folks in the South, more sinful than folks in Oklahoma or Delaware or Oregon or anyplace else? Or is God just sloppy in handing out justice? This whole notion is just garbage. A lot of things happen in this world that are not God's will. That's why every time we say the Lord's Prayer, what do we say? Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. If God got God's way, ours would be a much different world. It would be much better, wouldn't it? And someday it will be. Meantime, take comfort in knowing that God does not want this virus to kill you, and that God is with you all the way, all the time, in things good and bad. We'll talk again soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.